Hey, how you doing? It's Charlie and welcome to the lesson. Bit of a different tack for today. No guitars. I'm going to be talking about guitar exam grades, specifically contemporary ones, whether you should bother with them at all. And I'm just going to have a quick look at the kind of two heavyweights in that arena, RGT and Rockschool, and just to look at three of their different kind of syllabuses. I'm going to look at their electric, their rock guitar, and then their acoustic guitar, and just quickly sort of give a quick overview of them and sort of my thoughts on how they work. So initially, guitar grades, I'm talking about contemporary grades here, so I'm not going to be covering classical. I think they're a really good thing. I teach them a lot. I teach them a lot because I think it gives a really good structure. I think it gives a sort of sense of progression. I also think that having an exam date is something to work towards. I don't really think that can be a bad thing. It can be maybe a bad thing if you don't do anything else, if you just do exams and there's no extracurricular stuff around that. There's perhaps you could fall into a trap and people say it stifles sort of creativity, which again is a fair point, but largely it is down to what you want to achieve as a guitarist. Obviously, you know, people want different things. It's not for everybody, but generally speaking, I think they are good. Yes, I think there is a danger that you can become very bored and they are dull, but hopefully if you're learning with a teacher who understands that, they're going to be able to sort of tailor the lessons to sort of, you know, guard against that. I would hope. Other little things about grades, not that in any way should it be a motivation for playing music, but they do, for Rockschool and RGT, you do get UCAS points from grade 6 and above, so that can be a bit of a sweetener, but as I say, I don't think you should pick up and play guitar for UCAS points, certainly. So anyway, I'll crack on with what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna start with electric guitar grades. So here we have RGT, electric guitar playing. This is grade 5 book. I've got a number of their books really good. I have to say that I think these are probably my favourite. I think they're absolutely brilliantly written. They're very technical. Okay, so if you want to play repertoire, perhaps not for you. However, if you want all the skills that you need to be able to play electric guitar, I think I really can't see there's much wrong with these books, if I'm being honest. So they basically will grill you to start with on a load of scales, arpeggios and chords, all from memory. You just have to play them. Obviously it gets harder as you go up the grades. There's then a chord chart that you have to play, again unseen, you haven't seen it before. There's then another chord chart that you have to solo over, again it's a different chord chart. There's some questions that'll be things like, you know, name the notes of G major scale, etc. There's the oral tests, unfortunately, and then there's a specialism from grade 6 to 8. You choose a specialism section. So really good, really comprehensive. I've got to say, I think they're brilliantly thought out. I'm not biased, honest. I genuinely think they are really, really good. So yeah, that's what I think of those. Rockschool's equivalent are these. I teach these quite a lot. Again, I think they're good. They're very focused on repertoire. So these books will have 3 tunes that you have to pick from. There's 6 in the book. They're all sound alike. So they're not going to be songs that you've ever heard before. So there's a typical blues one. There'll be a typical punk rock one. There'll be a kind of heavy rock. So very focused on repertoire. A lot of the marks are from the pieces. You've then got the technical section, which I have to admit I have got a bit of an issue with how they present it in the Rockschool grades. They will give a bunch of scales and then they'll give you a bunch of root notes. There is a tendency in the early grades for people to be able to basically just pick the scale and read it out of the book, which I think is not really how scales should be taught personally. I do it a little bit differently when I'm teaching for the exams, but that's just how they do it. So I think their technical section is just a bit, I don't think it's fantastically thought out. I just think it could be improved. There's the sight reading, and then there's some questions at the end and some oral tests as well. All right, so generally overview, I think the RGT grades are a lot more technical, but arguably you will learn more with them. However, these are very, very, very popular because the repertoire is really nicely and well put together. All right, so that's electric. Next. Now, someone decided that people like to be able to play actual songs that they've heard. So if your kind of technical elements of learning guitar aren't as much of an interest to you, it's probably worth looking at rock guitar playing. So RGT's rock guitar playing grades look something like this. And you basically, the format is really simple. You're given, you can actually have free choice pieces. I'm not going to talk about that, but if you get this book, this covers grades 1 to 3. There are 3 songs per grade, and they basically arrange them specifically for that grade. The tracks are really nicely recorded, and they're quite concise, and they're really nicely written. So for example, at grade 3, you've got All Right Now by Free. You've got, what else is here? I always forget. Pinball Wizard and Paranoid by Black Sabbath. So you pick 2 of those, you then would get this book, and from here it basically teaches you, because you're in the exam, you would be given a chord chart over which you have to improvise a lead solo and then play the chords back over a backing track. So it kind of gives you all those tools. It will give you the chord voicings that are relevant to the grade. It will give you the scales. Then there's an oral section as well at the end, which is just to do with playback and chord recognition. So that's RGT's thing. Again, love it because it's real world. It's making a rock guitarist think like a rock guitarist has to think. So I think they're really nicely thought out. Rockschool's equivalent is called Hot Rocks, which looks like this. They've updated the books. I think this is an old one. But generally the idea is pretty much exactly as your electric grade is, but you can replace, for Rockschool, you can replace some of your electric pieces with some of the Hot Rocks pieces. So at grade 2, for example, they've got Albatross by Fleetwood Mac, Californication, Enter Sandman, Highway to Hell, You Give Love a Bad Name. So you could trade in 2 of those for one of your Rockschool pieces, but you'd have to keep one of the original written Rockschool pieces. You can only have 2 Hot Rocks. Other than that, I believe the exam is exactly the same, okay? Again, these arrangements are good. I think they're slightly harder than the ones in the book, but I think that's kind of just the way it is. So RGT, generally, I really like this stuff because it's sort of real world perspective and teaching you the things that a guitarist is going to need to know. Rockschool does it well. It's nicely presented, but same thing as I said before, I just think the way that the technical exercises are presented don't teach you as much, I guess. All right. Finally, acoustic guitar, really popular. Much thanks to this bloke. He's done a lot for acoustic guitar, I think. So RGT's syllabus has been around for ages, hugely popular. Again, acoustic guitarist makes it for the real world. In these books, you're given basically a load of chords, a load of scales, some arpeggios as you go up the grade, all from memory, you have to play them. There's then a performance piece, which will be most likely a kind of Celtic, sort of folky, bluesy type tune. There's an accompaniment section, which everybody fears, but again, it's really good. You're basically given a chord chart in the exam that you've never seen before, and you've got to accompany the examiner playing the melody. All right, really good. That's exactly what acoustic guitar players do in real life. There's an oral test section. There's some musical knowledge. And I think that's it for that. I mean, again, really great, nicely put together, hugely popular, these things, so well worth a look. The Rockschool equivalent, I think these they haven't been out that long, a couple of years maybe. They basically follow, from what I tell, a very similar format to the Rockschool electric grades that we talked about. However, obviously they've put in acoustic songs. Now repertoire, I think is fantastic. Like grade 2, we've got Ed Sheeran, Jeff Buckley, Bob Dylan, Paul Weller, Oasis. I've got to say, I only have this book, I must admit, but I think the grade 2 repertoire is just too hard. I don't think it's equivalent to what you would perceive a grade 2 level player to be able to play. I just think they've pitched it wrong, but that's grade 2 and that's all I've got. Other than that, I think it follows the same format. So I think for acoustic guitar, generally speaking, I would usually always sort of side towards the RGT stuff. Personally, but yeah, so that's my kind of thought on it anyway. So to close things, guys, I think generally guitar grades are a great idea. I think it does depend on your circumstances. You might not be someone that's got any interest in doing them, but I think it does benefit most people in some ways. With regards to the syllabus, again, it depends on what your needs are, but I do find the RGT stuff to be very real world focused and give you the skills that you need. But the Rockschool stuff is still really popular, focused that little bit more on repertoire and playing with songs and playing along and that sort of stuff. Other than that, that's really cool. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys soon.